the crisis that is to come. The absolute annihilation of everything, everywhere.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Greetings and salutations, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. Got it memorized? Justice League Warworld is the latest installment in the Tomorrowverse, and it may just be one of the more unique premises I've ever seen for a Justice League story. Following the events of the Legion of Superheroes, the Justice League has been misplaced in Warworld, a mobile planetoid controlled by its ruthless ruler, Mongul. They're forced into separate illusions at the hands of an imprisoned and tortured Martian Manhunter. Each member is off on a different journey, a different timeline, a different experience. But essentially what you get is Wonder Woman in the Wild West, Barbarian Batman, and Noir Superman. Each introduction almost serves as its own standalone story, initially feeling as if it's its own Elseworld tale on each iconic comic book character. You have reporter Clark Kent discovering the existence of aliens and interrogating everyone inside an old-timey diner, which seems straight out of an old sci-fi movie, black and white and all. Batman goes to medieval times where he takes on the role of a mercenary, and Wonder Woman becomes the woman with no name, taking on a very High Plains drifter type of character. She uses very little words and allows her actions to speak for her. It's both surprising and unsurprising how well she fits in. It's certainly not an atmosphere I would think I would see Diana in, but given the fact that her main weapon of choice is a lasso, it seems fitting on that front. For the most part, I think they managed to stay true to each character while adjusting accordingly to better suit their environments. The characters still feel the same in spirit, they're just altered in terms of their appearance, and displaced in different dimensions and time. What I appreciate about this form of storytelling is that it allowed the movie to pay tribute and even incorporate some of the more obscure or otherwise just less beloved characters from DC Comics. Characters that usually don't get much time in the limelight. Warlord, Deimos, Mariah, Faraday, the most famous of the bunch of course being Jonah Hex. And when Jonah Hex is the big get of the group, you should know that you're not exactly dealing with A-listers. I prefer the usage of lesser known heroes and villains as opposed to creating and conjuring up brand new ones for these off-tales. I rather that we see more attention be devoted to the forgotten. I recognize that pieces of other famous stories were somewhat utilized in the creation of this one. There's a whole Warworld saga that took place in the comics that has very little relation to this. This is also not the first Barbarian Batman, as that concept has been toyed around with on more than one occasion in the comics. Superman as a sci-fi story is also something that has been pitched a million times over. It's an entertaining premise for sure, and I like what's done with it, but I also can't help but wish they did a little bit more. Each solo story showcases the soon-to-be Justice League's powers and personality through the veil of a new setting and genre. They're without a doubt the most interesting aspects of this story, and I think each of them could have made for a really compelling what-if standalone story. I think this concept would work much better either as 3 separate Elseworld movies, or as a part of an episodic series. The movie feels a little disjointed by time it ends, and I understand that a lot of that's by design, but the pacing of the sequence of events feels both dragged out and rushed at the same time. If each of these was a standalone event, you could take much more time in establishing the lore of the fictional universe each of our heroes inhabit. We could get sucked into the story and want to see them defy the odds, and their victory would mean so much more, even if we were in on the fact that this is all taking place in a simulation. Their times under illusion would mean more, and we'd get to see how these environments would affect the League's founding fathers, and main mother. Whereas if this was a part of a series, just enough time would be afforded to each of these characters' new lives before inevitably throwing them together and having them break free. Because these aspects of the story aren't afforded more time, but also aren't condensed to wrap things up, it feels like it devotes too much time on each of these other virtual worlds and not nearly enough time explaining the overall plot. DC's top 3 finally do meet up and shatter the illusion, with the help of a very distressed Martian Manhunter, breaking through and shattering the illusion, managing to meet up and merge to form the Justice League. And what should be the highlight of the film feels more like a slow decline. It feels like the story stops its fluidity and just starts rushing into explanation mode. It doesn't help that the setting goes from constantly changing to a sudden standstill. We go from a spaghetti western to a Conan the Barbarian remake to the 1940s, and then to the inside of an alien ship for the rest of the movie. This also being the first official forming of the League feels a little bit underwhelming. The movie doesn't make it that big of a deal, and that kind of feels like a mistake. It's the birth of the greatest assembly of superheroes. This should feel more like an event, shouldn't it? The whole movie centers around the Martian bringing the team together, but even that plot point lasts a moment. Martian Manhunter merges with one of the white Martians and becomes the key to self-destruct Warworld. As the place is set to be destroyed, the heroes are greeted by an unfamiliar face, and that's the end of the movie. That's it. That is the most bizarre ending to a DC movie I think I've ever seen. The latter half of the movie just spends its time trying to explain itself, but it does such a poor job in doing that. And then it doesn't even bother to try to clue you into how it's ending. Buy our next movie and figure it out. And now I'm not a betting man, nor is this me guessing, but the introduction of this character and even the appearance does feel somewhat reminiscent of Wave Rider to me. I'm not saying that's who it is, but I am saying that's who I thought it was originally. However, after a little digging, I found out that this is in fact supposed to be Harbinger, whose presence certainly makes more sense and is an interesting end reveal. But it's also bizarre that this is the note they chose to end on. The movie's slow to get to the point, but then it rushes to the finish line once it gets near it. The heroes don't even feel like they're all that effective. I mean, I enjoyed their team up and their interactions within the team, but ultimately Martian Manhunter is the one pulling the strings. Or, at the very least, leaving behind a large trail of breadcrumbs to the end goal. By the time they get there and set John Jones free, it's just in time for him to make his selfless sacrifice to end Mongul's reign of terror. Mongul, a villain we've barely gotten any chance to know. He's the main antagonist of the movie, and yet he gets next to no screen time or attention. Much more focus is put on the returning Lobo, who serves as his underling. Though that isn't a complaint by any means, as I happen to love Lobo, and I happen to love this Lobo. I'm always happy to see a return of the character. He is the movie's greatest entertainment factor as far as I'm concerned. I hope I'm not misrepresenting the movie, because I know that I've given a lot of criticisms and critiques, but I did not by any stretch of the imagination hate this movie. As a matter of fact, I kinda liked it. But I find that while I ultimately did enjoy the ride, it was very short-lived. And just as I was really starting to get invested, it ended. I kind of feel like this was a waste of the League. Despite their inclusion in the plot, this hardly feels like a Justice League story at all. They hardly did any hero work on their own. I mean, they came together and fought a couple bad guys, but it was never by their own choice or planning. It was in defense and under the orders of an intergalactic stranger who took up squatters' rights in their minds. It's not bad by any means, but it's also far from the best that this movie universe has had to offer. I stand by my statement that the Tomorrowverse doesn't miss. But if I'm being honest, I wouldn't call this a hit either. Let me put it to you like this, if Man of Tomorrow and Batman the Long Halloween were home runs, then this was a bunt. It got the job done, but it didn't do it gracefully. It got by strategically just by the skin of its teeth. While I do like what they did, I didn't love it the same way I've loved a lot of the rest of this universe's offerings. I'm actually kind of upset that I don't have more to say. It's just that there's not really a whole lot to analyze about this one. I'm struggling to string together a couple sentences about this flick after watching it on back-to-back viewings. I just wish there was a little bit more here to talk about, but it is what it is, and what it is alright. Just alright. Would I recommend this movie? If you're a DC fan and a Justice League completionist, absolutely. If the creative concept surrounding it intrigues you, go for it. But if you're a casual and you only go out of your way to see the creme de la creme, this ain't it. It seems like it's setting up a greater story. And I would be willing to bet, despite what I said earlier about me not being a betting man, that the next one will probably be much better. But judging this as is, it's okay. Only okay. With that being said, if you like this video, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Batman is, well, Batman!
I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.